Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Tehran under threat from within and without. Israel planning for the failure of JCPOA negotiations, while internal conflict in Iran weighing on nation's stability. Meantime, a cleaner and leaner meat for all, now set to export to select locales in Europe. And finally, move over Miss Universe, another pageant in Israel taking center stage. To begin, discussions on Iran seemingly failing to progress amidst visits to Israel by United States Special Representative for Iran Robert Malley and United States UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield. The Biden administration continuing to play things close to the vest, arguing that diplomacy is, of course, the first priority, but that alternatives will always need to be considered. Israeli officials, on the other hand, assuming that the nuclear talks in Vienna, set to resume later this month, are nothing but Iran's attempt to stall. This as Tehran continuing to step further away from compliance with the 2015 agreement, including doubling its stock of enriched uranium and resuming work at centrifuge plants allegedly previously targeted by Israel. And that's also why Israeli officials are again reiterating their resolve against the threat from the Iranian Ayatollah regime. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and Defense Minister Gantz overseeing the latest in a series of massive military drills in preparation for the worst.
אנחנו מתמודדים עם איראן ושלוחותיה בלבנון, בסוריה, ולא משנה מה יקרה בין איראן לבין המעצמות, ואנחנו בהחלט מודאגים מהעובדה שאין מספיק קשיחות אל מול ההפרות האיראניות. ישראל תגן על עצמה בכוחות עצמה.
בזירה הצפונית אנחנו רואים את הפעילות של איראן, גם בתוך איראן בהקשרי הגרעין, גם בהקשרי ההתעצמות שלה מחוץ לרצועה לאיראן. ההשפעה שלה בסוריה וההשפעה שלה בלבנון. אני משוכנע שהעולם צריך לפעול כנגד איראן, וישראל צריכה להמשיך לעשות את מה שהיא צריכה להמשיך לעשות בכל אחת מהזירות בכלל ובזירה הצפונית בפרט.
So what comes next with Iran? Joining us to discuss this and more, ILTV reporter Asaf Nissan. Asaf, thanks so much for joining us. Now, what is Israel's, what is Israel's plan here? Is the government preparing a plan B in case the talks fail in Vienna, or are they really doing this either way?
I think they're doing it either way, because we're seeing that no matter what, Israel has always continued to prepare for any outcome with Iran, whether it's negotiations. Back in 2015, we've seen it from Netanyahu, also going to Congress trying to fight the decision. But once it came through, of course, he made the deal with Obama, at least making sure that security-wise will be safe. But now again, we're seeing the attempts in 2020 and 2021. And we're seeing Iran approaching the table and again saying they want to come in, but they're still stalling, and Israel's not taking a chance on anyhow.
So is this, just to clarify again, is this Israel not taking chances and covering its bases, or do you suspect that Israel might actually take an active step regardless of whether or not Iran actually signs a new JCPOA?
Well, we've seen Israel taking active measures in its proxies, pretty much with Hezbollah and a lot of these strikes in Syria, and we've seen it before, and I'm not surprised. Israel would take any direction anyways, but the difference is, I think, that Israel right now is covering its bases more than anything and letting the world know that no matter what, we're still going to be ready for any outcome that will be on the table.
What level of trust do you believe there is between, Ambassadors Greenfield and Malley with the Iranian regime ahead of these talks, especially given the fact that, as we discussed, they're upping their centrifuge production, they're upping their uranium production and enrichment, and continuing to, to invest in their terror proxies abroad.
Interesting enough, you're talking about the enrichment, because despite the fact that Israel said Iran was the one who talked about enriching and going back to their plants, they did finally invite the IAEA to come into Iran, which means the fact that they're inviting them into the plants right now actually shows good faith. So again, it's a level of question how much Iran is playing things behind the table and keeps hiding the real intentions from the rest of the world. Now, seeing it, of course, with Robert Malley running around the Middle East trying to convince people that Iran's okay, again, Malley has a history with Israel, especially due to the original JCPOA. So there's a lot of mistrust from the Israeli government, at least, and a lot of its allies from Mali. So I'm not sure the level of trust is the question here as much as it would be the level of the U.S. willing to comply to coming back to the talks, because right now we know they are not in there, so it's a question.
All right. Asaf, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Now, as nuclear talks with Iran up ahead and Israel preparing a plan B, assuming that they'll fail, some analysts are saying that neither the JCPOA negotiations nor military strikes may be necessary. This as reports from inside Iran show a regime seemingly falling apart. Here to explain is Middle East expert and lecturer from Bar-Ilan University, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Dr. Kedar, thanks so much for being with us. Now, Iran is suffering from economic crises, the currency reaching an all-time low, and there are reports of Ayatollah Khamenei's ill health. Is this what you mean when you speak of Iran on the edge, so to speak?
No, I'm talking about something totally different. And just to explain it, we have to go backward 30 more and more years to the days when the Soviet Union fell apart. And as you know, the Soviet Union fell apart according to ethnic units, because what was the USSR today is Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, okay, all these ethnic states which emerged from the ruins of the Soviet Union. The same thing will happen inevitably in Iran, with Iran, because Iran is not one nation, one people. It is, of course, the Persians who are the, let's say, more or less half of the population, while the other half, and maybe even more, are some 40 ethnic groups. The 5 big ethnic groups are the Arabs who live in the Ahwaz, in the south west part of the country, the Baloch, which live in the Balochistan, in the eastern, southeast district of Iran, the Azeris in the north, the Kurds in the northwest, and the Turkmens in the northeast, and there are many more groups like Bakhtiar